Welcome to the congregation of Yahweh. We're here on Yahweh's Sabbath day. Greetings to those on the internet. We hope that the messages are a blessing to you. Today's message is entitled Capital Punishment. What does the Bible say about capital punishment? Was capital punishment only for those poor Israelites who were in bondage to the law, traditionally speaking? And are we under a new system? And what did the Messiah have to say about capital punishment? Is there a contradiction between the Torah and the Messianic scriptures? Most people in this room have come to the understanding that there are no contradictions, and that from Genesis to Revelation you find harmony. And we believe that grace is not a license to commit sin, but He extends His grace in an effort for us to obey out of love. But those in the mainstream, when they find that we support Torah, they might ask, well, do you still sacrifice? And we know that the Messiah said, not one jot or tittle shall pass from the law till all be fulfilled. And if anyone breaks the least of the commandments and teaches others to do the same shall be called least in the kingdom. But he that does the commandments and teaches shall be called great. So, how do we address capital punishment? Keeping in mind that He said not one jot or tittle shall pass. And also in Luke, it says that it's easier for heaven and earth to pass than for one jot and tittle to pass. Well, the mainstream might say, well, do you sacrifice? Well, the sacrificial system was not done away with. The sacrificing of animals was done away with. But the supreme sacrifice came in and took over the sacrificial system. We don't have to go to the priest because He is our priest. We don't have to go to the temple. He's in the temple. These things weren't done away with. They were superseded by the One. So where do we stand with capital punishment? Let's go to a few things. First off, there are about 16 to 18 defining moments in Scripture to inflict capital punishment: premeditated murder, kidnapping, striking your parents, idolatry, breaking the Sabbath, blasphemy, a false prophet, human sacrifice, divination, adultery, bestiality, incest, homosexuality, a priest's daughter being a harlot, harlotry, rape, perjury against capital offenses, false claim of virginity in marriage, and sex outside of engagement. So, first I want to go back to the first instance of capital punishment in Genesis chapter 9. Genesis 9 verse 4. But flesh with the life thereof, which is the blood thereof, shall you not eat, and surely your blood of your lives will I require. At the hand of every beast will I require it, and at the hand of man. At the hand of every man's brother will I require the life of man. Whosoever sheds man's blood, by him shall his blood be shed, for in the image of Elohim made he man. So this was long before the written Torah. He says, if a man murders, his life will be required. Another thing, when discussing the Torah with the mainstream, they might say, well, why don't you stone your children? If you want to keep the Torah, when your children are bad, why don't you stone them? Let's go to there real quick in Deuteronomy chapter 21. Does the Torah really say stone your children when they're bad? Deuteronomy 21 and verse 18. If a man have a stubborn and rebellious son, which will not obey the voice of his father or the voice of his mother, and when they have chastened him, will not hearken unto them, then shall his father and his mother lay hold on him, and bring him out unto the elders of his city, and unto the gate of his place, and they shall say unto the elders of his city, this our son is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey our voice. He is a glutton and a drunkard. And all the men of his city shall stone him with stones, that he die. So shalt thou put evil away from among you, and all Israel shall hear and fear. Now, the claim was that he was a glutton and a drunkard. This does not sound like an infant or a young child. This is somebody that's old enough, knows better, and he's out there being a glutton and a drunkard. And after repeated, it says they chastened him, they tried to get him to listen, and he wouldn't. And it doesn't say that the parents picked up stones to stone the son. Right. It says they were taken to the elders. There's an order. And the reason that this happened, in verse 21, it says, to put away the evil from among you, and that Israel shall hear and fear. We're going to find that a repetitive theme, to get the evil out from amongst you, so that everyone else might fear. So how does this go along with one of the commandments that says thou shalt not kill? Some would jump to the conclusion, oh, we're not supposed to kill nobody. Turn the other cheek. Well, it should probably be rendered thou shalt not murder, because that would contradict all the other verses when he says that person needs to be put to death. Let's go over to the Messianic Scriptures in Matthew chapter 5. And there's a few things from Matthew to Revelations that people want to conclude that we don't need a capital punishment. Matthew chapter 5, verse 38. You have heard that it hath been said, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. But I say unto you that you resist not evil, but whosoever shall smite thee on thy right cheek, turn to him the other also. And if any man will sue thee at the law, and take away thy coat, let him have thy cloak also. And whosoever shall compel thee to go a mile, go with him too. Now, the eye for eye, tooth for tooth was to make sure that the punishment met the crime. Equality, justice. He did not say that an eye for eye and a tooth for tooth was a bad thing. Nor is there anything that followed that saying that he did not support capital punishment. Romans chapter 12. And verse 17. Recompense to no man evil for evil. Provide things honest in the sight of all men. Don't repay anyone evil for evil. So if someone does something evil that's worthy of death, is it evil that they receive the death penalty? If it be possible, as much as lies in you, live peaceably with all men. Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith Yahweh. Therefore, if thine enemy hunger, feed him. Now, does that mean if an enemy does something worthy of death, we need to lock them away in prison for the rest of their life and feed them and get all the taxpayers' money to provide for a vicious killer or a pedophile? Are we supposed to just lock them up and make the citizens pay for it? Is that right? We're going to find out. We're going to come to the conclusion that Yahweh has a design, and unfortunately we're living in the days far away from His design. John chapter 8. This is another set of scriptures used to speak against capital punishment, saying that even the Savior wouldn't go along with it. Starting in verse 1, John chapter 8, verse 1, Yeshua went unto the Mount of Olives, and early in the morning he came again unto the temple, and all the people came unto him, and he sat down and taught them. And the scribes and Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery, and when they had set her in the midst, they say unto him, Teacher, this woman was taken in adultery, in the very act. Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned. But what sayest thou? This they said, tempting him, or testing him, that they might have to accuse him. But Yeshua stooped down and with his finger wrote on the ground as though he heard them not. Now, the way that they're presenting this woman and the way that they're questioning him, they're trying to trap him. They're trying to find a reason to accuse him. Verse 7. So when they continued asking him, he lifted up himself and said unto them, He that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her. And again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. And they which heard it, being convicted by their own conscience, went away one by one, beginning at the eldest even unto the last. And Yeshua was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. When Yeshua had lifted up himself and saw none but the woman, he said unto her, Woman, where are those thine accusers? Hath no man condemned thee? She said, No man, Master. And Yeshua said unto her, Neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. Now, at first glance, we think, well, the Torah commands that a person be stoned for such a thing, and the Messiah himself said that he did not condemn her. Is he going contrary to the Torah? Well, if we dig a little deeper, he was not allowed to condemn her. We're going to find out why. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 22. And verse 22. If a man be found lying with a woman married to a husband, then they shall both of them die, both the man that lay with the woman and the woman. So shalt thou put away evil from Israel. We'll notice that phrase again, put away the evil from Israel. But we have a missing ingredient. Where was the man? They only brought the woman to the Messiah. It says, according to the Torah, both of them were to be presented and put to death. Let's go over to Leviticus chapter 20. And verse 10. And the man that committeth adultery with another man's wife, even he that commits adultery with his neighbor's wife, the adulterer and the adulteress shall surely be put to death. And there also has to be a witness system. Leviticus chapter 5. And if a soul sin and hear the voice of swearing, and is a witness, whether he hath seen or known of it. If he do not utter it, then he shall bear his iniquity. If you are a witness, you're supposed to speak up. Deuteronomy chapter 17. Starting in verse 6. Oh, I'm in the wrong book. Sorry. Deuteronomy 17. I was wondering why that didn't add up. Got to be in the right book. All right. 17 and verse 6. At the mouth of 2 witnesses or 3 witnesses shall he that is worthy of death be put to death. But at the mouth of 1 witness he shall not be put to death. Mercy. Messiah was the only one left standing there. He was not a witness. He could not condemn her. He was following Torah. And unless all those men that came were witnesses, they couldn't be witnesses either. Continuing on, the hands of the witnesses shall be first upon him to put him to death. Let he who is without sin be the first to cast the stone. And afterward the hands of all the people, so thou shalt put the evil away from among you. If there arise a matter too hard for thee in judgment, between blood and blood, between plea and plea, and between stroke and stroke, being matters of controversy within thy gates, then shalt thou arise and get thee up into the place which Yahweh thy Elohim shall choose, and thou shalt come unto the priests, the Levites, and unto the judge that shall be in those days, and inquire, and they shall show thee the sentence of judgment. And thou shalt do according to the sentence which they of that place which Yahweh shall choose shall show thee, and shalt observe to do according to all that they inform thee, according to the sentence of the law which they shall teach thee, and according to the judgment which they shall tell thee, thou shalt do. Thou shalt not decline from the sentence which they shall show thee, to the right hand nor to the left. So, things that were matters of great controversy were supposed to go to the Levites and the judges that were put in place. A judicial system. And what did they use to judge? The Torah. The Levites' responsibility was to know the Torah, to teach the Torah, and to judge by the Torah. Deuteronomy chapter 19, verse 15. 1 witness shall not rise up against a man for any iniquity or for any sin. If any sin that he sinneth at the mouth of 2 witnesses or at the mouth of 3 witnesses shall the matter be established. If a false witness rise up against any man to testify against him that which is wrong, then both the men between whom the controversy is shall stand before Yahweh, before the priests and the judges which shall be in those days, and the judges shall make diligent inquisition. And behold, if the witness be a false witness, and hath testified falsely against his brother, then shall you do unto him as he had thought to have done unto his brother. So shalt thou put the evil away from amongst you. And again, we're gonna hear that over and over. The reason capital punishment was put in place is to get the evil out, and that others may fear. Now, was this just a Old Testament concept, just that old law of bondage concept? 1 Timothy chapter 5.
What, John, what?
1 Timothy chapter 5. Verse 19. Against an elder receive not an accusation, but before 2 or 3 witnesses. 2 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 1. This is the 3rd time I am coming to you. In the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses shall every word be established. And Deuteronomy chapter 13. Verse 12. If thou shalt hear, say, in one of thy cities, which Yahweh thy Elohim hath given thee to dwell there, saying, certain men, the children of Belial, are gone out from among you, and have withdrawn the inhabitants of their city, saying, let us go and serve other Elohim, which you have not known. Then shalt thou inquire, and make search, and ask diligently. This is an investigation. And behold, if it be true, and the thing certain, that such abomination is wrought among you, thou shalt surely smite the inhabitants of that city with the edge of the sword, destroying it utterly, and all that is therein, and the cattle thereof with the edge of the sword. And thou shalt gather all the spoil of it into the midst of the street thereof, and shalt burn with fire the city, and all the spoil thereof, every whit, for Yahweh the Elohim, and it shall be a heap forever. It shall not be built again. Deuteronomy chapter 1. Verse 13. Take you wise men and understanding, and known among your tribes, and I will make them rulers over you. And you answered me and said, the thing which thou hast spoken is good for us to do. So I took the chief of your tribes, wise men and known, and made them heads over you, captains over thousands, and captains over hundreds, and captains over 50s, and captains over 10s, and officers among your tribes. And I charged your judges at that time, saying, hear the causes between your brethren, and judge righteously between every man and his brother, and the stranger that is with him. You shall not respect persons in judgment, but you shall hear the small as well as the great. You shall not be afraid of the face of man, for the judgment is Elohim's. And the cause that is too hard for you, bring it unto me, and I will hear it. And I commanded you at that time all the things which you should do. So we see here that judges were put in place. And we've seen that there had to be an investigation. There had to be 2 or 3 witnesses. And Luke chapter 12, this was just an interesting statement when it come to judging and judges being put in place. Chapter 12, verse 13. And one of the company said unto him, Teacher, speak to my brother that he divide the inheritance with me. And he said unto him, Man, who made me a judge or a divider over you? Acts chapter 25. And this is Paul speaking, being on trial. And just by what he's saying, he knows that capital punishment is in place. Verse 10, of course, this is under Roman law. Then said Paul, I stand at Caesar's judgment seat, where I ought to be judged. To the Jews have I done no wrong, as thou verily knowest well. For if I be an offender, or have committed anything worthy of death, I refuse not to die. But if there be none of these things whereof these accuse me, no man may deliver me unto them. I appeal unto Caesar. Romans chapter 13. And verse 1. Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there is no power but of Yahweh. The powers that be are ordained of Yahweh. Whosoever therefore resists the power resists the ordinance of Elohim, and they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to evil. Wilt thou then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same. For he is the minister of Yahweh to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid, for he bears not the sword in vain. What could the sword be used for? The sword is a weapon of violence, a weapon of death. And it says that he bears not the sword in vain, for he is the minister of Yahweh, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that does evil. 1 Peter chapter 2. Verse 13, submit yourselves to every ordinance of man for the master's sake, whether it be to the king as supreme, or unto governors as unto them that are sent by him, for the punishment of evildoers and for the praise of them that do well. Now, several times through the reading, and there's numerous places that we didn't read it, it says that this capital punishment had to be done to get the evil out from among you. And that principle is also in 1 Corinthians chapter 5. Now, there's a man in the congregation who is having unlawful relations with his father's wife. And pick it up in verse 5. It says, to deliver such a one unto Satan for the destruction of the flesh, that the spirit may be saved in the day of the Master Yeshua. Your boasting is not good. Know you not that a little leaven leavens the whole lump? And that theme right there is kind of what we see when he says, get the evil out from among you. Why? Because a little leaven leavens the whole lump. Verse 7, purge out therefore the old leaven, that you may be a new lump, as you are unleavened. For even the Messiah, our Passover, is sacrificed for us. Therefore let us keep the feast, not with the old leaven, neither with the leaven of malice and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. I wrote unto you in a letter not to company with fornicators, not at all meaning with the fornicators of this world. He's told them to stay away from fornicators, but he's writing this here to be a little more clear. Verse 10, not at all meaning with the fornicators of this world, or with the covetous, or extortioners, or with idolaters, for then must you needs go out of the world. But now I have written unto you not to keep company, if any man that is called a brother be a fornicator, or covetous, or an idolater, or a railer, or a drunkard, or an extortioner. With such a one, know not to eat. Now, in the context, he's talking about keeping the feasts. He's saying, get this person who's congregating with you, get him out, and do not keep this feast with him. Verse 12, and which is another reason why over in Corinthians he says you need to examine yourself before you partake of the bread and the wine. For what have I to do to judge them also that are without? Do not you judge them that are within? But them that are without, Elohim judges. Therefore put away from among yourselves that wicked person. And in chapter 6, verse 1, dare any of you having a matter against another go to law before the unjust and not before the saints. We're going to see a principle here that inside the congregation we need to judge matters amongst ourselves. If a brother bumps into my car out here in the parking lot in the congregation, I don't need to drag him off to the heathen courts out there to settle it. We need to settle it inside the congregation. And those that are out there in the world doing worldly things, let the worldly courts judge them. And back to the concept of having the Levites and the judges to decide these matters, we don't have them in place. So those people that are committing offenses like that, unfortunately, this satanic government we're under, they're the ones that are going to judge them. And that system is crooked as all get out. So to answer the question, yes, capital offense should be in place, but the system that uses capital offense is not in place. So they're left to the worldly courts to judge them. Now, closing out, we have this idea, or we have this understanding in the scriptures that he wants to get the evil out from among us. We see that here, get the leaven out. He says, come out from among them and be ye separate, touch not the unclean thing, and I'll receive you. Well, what was he doing in Egypt? When the plagues were being poured out, he was pulling his people away from evil. At Mount Sinai, when they were having partying around the golden calves and all that wickedness, the Levites grabbed their sword. He said, slay every man your neighbor and every man your brother. What was he doing? He was putting the evil away. The flood, what was he doing? He was putting the evil away. And we're also going to have plagues in the near future and the lake of fire. And this is another example of capital punishment and putting the evil away. So next time somebody says, do you stone your children if you're trying to keep the Torah? Say, no, I don't. That's not my place. The stoning was to be done by the judges and under the Levitical priesthood. But yes, Yahweh believes in capital punishment. Hallelujah.